industry, and he was talking about how smart they were as a company because they were the only company out there that was capturing attention and then basically selling it back to the users. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. So I thought, well, I'll jump on there. And my personality is kind of an all-in personality. So I committed to using it every single day for an entire year.
Oh,
And
wow.
I found some people that were in my industry, and those people, those four people, turned out to be my closest friends in life and business partners now. And we've done so many things together. We've created a community online, we've created conferences. And if I would have told my mom 2 years ago that I was getting on a plane to meet strangers that I'd never actually met in person, she would have said, "What are you doing? That's unsafe. What are you thinking?" But there's something to communicating and building a relationship with the camera that made me really think about how the landscape of social media and marketing was really changing and how we were creating these very close, intimate relationships with people through the cameras in our smartphones that we always had with us. So I started using Snapchat. I didn't know what to do, so I said, "Oh, I'll just make a show and I'll share marketing tips every day." And as I kind of got into that, I kind of became known as the marketing person, the social media person. And then I started doing a little bit more of my personal life. At first, it was all business. And when I started doing more of my personal life as a mom and as a wife and kind of, my funny sense of humor, I started to see like an exponential change in the relationships that I had with people. And I realized that, you can't do business all the time on Snapchat, Instagram stories, Facebook stories. You can't, because people really want relatability, and relatability is really the most underutilized marketing tactic today.
Well, okay, so what I'm hearing is that, you know, because I've heard beforehand that, there's no use for Snapchat because, how you going, what's the return on investment using Snapchat? But from what I heard, you actually built, relationships with people that became your business partners later on. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, for me, going into this new adventure for 2018, I almost unknowingly built this global virtual board of directors. And I can now reach out and collaborate with them and say, "Oh, I need somebody to teach me how to do YouTube." Okay, I have a great Snapchat friend who's a YouTube expert. I need somebody to teach me how to do SEO. I have a great Snapchat friend who's an SEO expert. And that was really what the cool thing is that we help each other, and it's like nothing I've ever experienced before. I mean, for me, Snapchat's going to have a very special place in my heart forever. I'll be very sad one day if they, don't exist, but that may happen. But there's something about, holding someone in your hand every day and, watching their life and their family. I mean, you can't fake who you are every single day, all day, for forever. So people really get to know who you are. And like, there's a physicality in it. Like I'm actually holding someone in my hand as I'm watching their life, right? And YouTube was awesome because I loved watching YouTube, but like what's better than watching a YouTube video, being able to talk to somebody while they make it, right?
Wow, that's really cool. So this which relates to your book because you wrote a book called "Talking in Pictures: How Snapchat Changed Cameras, Communication, and Communities." What now? What was it? I know Snapchat played a role, but what was the inspiration behind you writing this book specifically?
So when I sat down with those people, those strangers, if you will, that I had never met before, we went to Salt Lake City. We actually spent a weekend there, and I brought my husband because, I'm a hypochondriac, and it would be still weird, right, to go meet people you didn't know. So I brought my husband, and we all met up, and we were sitting in a Starbucks, and my husband said to me, "It's really weird that you guys, it seems like you've known each other for years, and I'm watching you guys talk, and it's like you just saw each other yesterday." And so that made me start to really think like, what is different about Snapchat at the time? Because this was right when Facebook Live started coming out. This was before Instagram stories. I said, what is it about that? And it wasn't specifically the platform itself. it was the key elements that that app brought to people, which now other apps have. It was really about the intimacy of the camera and showing your face because, neuroscience, we can't help but connect with somebody when we see them eye to eye. It was the psychological triggers of us going in there and getting feedback and wanting more. And it really changed from something that had happened in the past, where we'd post something on Facebook or Twitter that had already happened, to being kind of this real-time visual communication, which was really a fundamental shift in how we were creating communities and communication. And so I didn't really know that when I started writing the book, but I knew there was something that I wanted to do, which, by the way, as a side note, if anybody's watching that wants to write a book or wants to embark on something they've never done before, they absolutely should, because the beauty is in not knowing what you're doing. Now that I've written a book, the second one is going to be real hard. But the first one was a journey, was an experience. And I documented that entire experience through Snapchat. And I will tell you that people sent me pictures, snaps of them holding my book and saying, "I'm so excited. I watched you for a year writing this book on Snapchat." And that was really cool. And that's something that's very different about what you can do with these camera first platforms, is that you can bring people into your story and become part of your journey, and you can document what you're doing, and you never have to sell. And when you don't have to sell or give a sales pitch, you don't have any sales objections to overcome. You never have to sell anything. People will come to you and ask you to buy your product, sign up for whatever. You never have to do it. It's the greatest experience ever. And everything I do from here on out is camera first.
Wow. That's okay. I did not expect to hear that part there because you wrote the book via video via Snapchat. That's I've never in my life have I heard that before. That's
Yeah,
just
I documented it and I shared that experience. I showed people the pictures up on my wall of my mind map, and I remember like moments of me wanting to give up. And it's funny because there's one scene that people who watched me at that time remember every time I talk to them about it. And at one point I had such writer's block that I took all the pages of paper, hundreds of pieces of paper, 8.5 by 11 computer paper, and I literally cut with a pair of scissors every sentence out. And I had like a 13-person dining room table, and it was all puzzle pieced through the table. And I remember people were like, "Oh my gosh." And I'm like, I guess I mentally can't get over this block unless I rearrange these pieces of my book. So, I also interviewed people for the book because I wanted to share the community. And those people were really part of that journey with me because they saw the different pieces that were happening. So that's what I'm going to be doing in 2018 with this startup thing. I'm going to be documenting that startup piece because, when you're having a really down day, there were a lot of times that I was going to give up writing that book, and I didn't, because the people that were with me on that journey were like, don't give up, and I probably would have given up if I hadn't shared that with other people.
well, okay. That's really cool. And so this is what leads to right now, like especially like live streaming per se, because you have you mentioned your show Chelschat, but can you said you started that show out beforehand, you know when you start using Snapchat, but I just noticed something beforehand, that you trademarked that name, which is really clever. So what was the importance of doing that? So did you see that it was going to be very you know majorly huge by that time?
The funny thing is, you hear all these, watch documentaries, and you see all these big names and what have you, and the people say, "Well, how did you come up with the name? How did that happen?" And 9 times out of 10, it's completely accidental, right? Which is such a letdown for people out there who are trying to come up with some great brand, right? And actually, I was trying to rebrand, a couple of months ago, and I called my Snapchat peeps that I talk to every day. In fact, my core group, those 4 people that I went and met, we talk every day, probably 40, 50 times a day through different varieties of apps. But I said, I just need to come up with a brand name. I'm going to do a YouTube channel. And all of them were like, "When I think of you, I think of Chelschat." And it would just came out. It wasn't anything that like I had specifically planned. I was joking around. I had an intern who was amazing, and I said, "Well, what should I call this?" And we just threw that name out, and it just stuck. And in fact, I think I'll probably call my YouTube channel Chelschats, and just stick with that because I don't know why. That's people on the street call me that. They'll say, you know, they won't say my name. They'll say, "Oh my gosh, what's up, Chelschat?" Or "It's so good to see you from, I can't believe it's you from Snapchat," or what have you. And it's that's just kind of happened.